There it is. I'm glad that you had me read that with you because, again, if you can see in the Psalms, the psalmists, some of them prophets in their own right, are reminding us exactly of what Old Testament prophets were about. Groundhogs, prophets, or myths? It is Groundhog Day today, and if you've been reading the news, you find out that this is even more significant because today is 2020. Yeah, I'm glad nobody woo-hooed for that. It's like, okay. The groundhog is the weather prophet. He has long established the role as tellers of how long our winter will last. Do we believe him? How do we know if he's credible? What separates prophet from story, legend, or myth? Steeped in years of telling the country what to expect with their weather, let's look at his prophetic history. Christy?
The groundhog, or woodchuck, a small mammal of North America, is known to winter in his burrow. His long, coarse fur doesn't appeal to stylists, but its hibernation and yearly emergence to observe the weather had made it the star of a popular American legend. Reportedly, Pennsylvania German started the legend that on the 2nd of February, the groundhog awakens from his long winter sleep, which leads to the Quarryville Hog Lodge, or the full name, the Slumbering Groundhog Lodge of Quarryville, Pennsylvania. For more than a half-century, the Lancaster County community has celebrated Groundhog Day in honor of, as the lodge tells us, the lowly animal which is the one and only true weather prophet. On February 2nd, they have been known to observe the groundhog emerge from its hideout. The lodge members are professional and businessmen, farmers, and just plain folk that like a bit of homespun fun and frolic once a year on Groundhog Day. Their charter will tell you their aims are to preserve and revere the folklore of their ancestors and to glorify the groundhog, which of the entire animal kingdom is the only one to have a day named in his honor. News film of past years shows the great moment when the little fellow was looked for to come out of his home in the ground. At last, patience was rewarded, and the unique weatherman poked his broad, flat, whiskered head out where his friends could see him and offer their salute. "Let us sit by the side of the groundhog hole," recited the members, "and wait for the prophet who knows, who can tell when winter is over and gone and done with its ice and its snows." So indeed the greater moment came for weather prognostication, groundhog version. Legend decreed that if the sun were shining when he came out of his burrow and he could see his shadow, the groundhog would be frightened and crawl back into his hole for 6 weeks more of winter hibernation. Had the day been cloudy, he'd remain above ground, confident of continuing mild weather. One year...
Shut that down. This is just in. This year's February 2nd, 2020. This is what we have as first-hand information from the groundhog.
Bill, we got two scrolls here. One is winter, one is summer. What do you think, buddy? Huh? Spring. I don't know. What do you think, buddy? Huh? I don't know. What do you think? The closest one to you?
Let's do that one.
What did you pick? We just set a record. Here you go.
You just put it. You got it. Put it up to my post.
Worth.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Now this second day of February 2nd, 2020, 02/02/2020, the 134th annual trek of the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club. Punxsutawney Phil, the seer of seers, prognosticator of all prognosticators, was awakened from his burrow to the cheers of thousands upon thousands of his faithful followers from around the world. In Groundhogese, Phil directed the inner circle to his prediction scroll, which reads, "It's a fantastic day in these beautiful woods, thousands and thousands in the Knob neighborhood. You faithful followers are the best, it's true. Who wouldn't want neighbors just like you? Now my forecast on a day that's a palindrome will cause some to cheer
and some to moan. He didn't see his shadow. Predicts an early spring." As you look out this morning, we got it, yeah. I don't know how that's going to go. Well, over the years, it seems, did you hear them call him the weather prophet? Oh boy, yeah. Since 1988, Groundhog Phil was right 14 times. If you're doing the math, all of you mathematicians, since 1988, that means that he was wrong 18 times. So they say that our prophet only has a rate of success of around 47%. Is that who you'd put your trust in? Yeah. Now, almost 2 decades ago, I don't believe that, but it is, actor Bill Murray starred in a comical movie about a man who was stuck to experience the same day of his life over and over again. Anybody remember that movie? I did see it. Yeah, look at the hands, yeah. It was called Groundhog Day. It just so happens that Bill Murray's character doesn't understand either thankfulness or the importance of his life. So he evidently needs to be taught a lesson while experiencing Groundhog's Day in the small rural town of Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, about 1,000 times, or at least over and over again. Though Groundhog's Day is obviously done in well-meant fun, there does exist a greater danger in attempting to predict the future outside of God's will. Whether it's tiny animals predicting the length of winter, or some obscure Mayan prediction from an ancient folklore about the end of our civilization, or even some well-known non-Christian religious group predicting the end of the world. Time after time, man's attempts to predict the future has been futile. In Matthew, we see that of all the prophets, Matthew was the one who lifted up and seemed to pay attention to the Old Testament writings, perhaps a bit more than our other 3 gospel writers. We don't know why this is, but we do know we glean information from Matthew, who keeps using and referring to Old Testament prophets in his New Testament gospel. Matthew chapter 7:15 says this, "Be aware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves." Let's put the brakes on a minute, gang. Be aware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. Real prophets stand the test of time. over time, we see God's promises put forth that the promises put forth by prophets are fulfilled. Have you ever encountered someone who at first seems to be amazing and true and concerned about your needs or your wishes or the state of where we are in our lives, and you are maybe perhaps a little enamored by this person, and indeed you seem to support this person, and then follow perhaps a little bit because you might start to rely on this person, and it's not till much, much later in your life that you begin to see cracks in that prophetic or person's stance. I suggest one measure of prophet or not might be that this prophet or person is consistent. They stay on message no matter what. They are open, not secretive, but open and honest in their hearts and their motives. A prime example in New Testament times were the Sadducees and the Pharisees, right? We can't deny that. Outwardly, they said and they did what was in accordance with God's laws, right? Those were the guys later following Jesus that appeared to know the law better than Jesus himself. Perhaps they wanted to look like upholders of truth. They were skilled and trained, and they looked like followers of Jesus that perhaps were just a little critical, kind of reining him in a little bit to uphold their Old Testament practices, which they had learned and memorized and passed on to their children. Inwardly, though, I don't know about ravenous wolves at the beginning, perhaps, but certainly by the end, isn't the phrase? You can't maintain that stance if you have a God of all, and they had a crack in their perhaps persona, and inside they were already plotting to trap, to discredit this true Messiah, Jesus, and Jesus' true followers in the law. The real problem is those guys couldn't humble themselves, right? They couldn't humble themselves and believe in the possibility that Jesus was the true Messiah. A prophecy of their ancestors could possibly be fulfilled. And the reason they couldn't get there was because of pride, selfishness, and greed. Matthew 16, 11, and 12. You need to look that one up because I'm going to speed here a little bit, and I'm going to read you Timothy, second letter to Timothy 4, 3 and 4. For a time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. That's young Timothy. He was of not Generation Z, as we would say now, or probably even Generation X, but he was one of we would call him a kid today by our standards. And he says, for a time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. Then they will turn their ears away from truth and turn to myth. Now, we can lightly go back here to our Groundhog movie, but there it is. Let's return to that movie for a minute for a better look at Bill Murray's plight. And I urge you guys, if you haven't seen it in a while, I saw it the first time, I thought it was kind of bizarre and funny. And of course, then last week, I looked at the movie again after I did some of my readings and praying, and listen to this. At first, we only know that Bill Murray is stuck for the 4th year in a row, according to the movie, on the same TV assignment. The moment that Punxsutawney Phil comes out of his hole, watching the same groundhog come out of the same hole, Bill Murray's character, whose name, by the way, is also Phil, views the people around him as boring losers and himself as the most interesting figure in his own life. Yet even he gets frustrated by the repetitive getting nowhere, a life with no growth and no accomplishment. And if you see the movie, it's Bill Murray, gang. Oh my gosh, picture him, right? As the movie unfolds, we learn that his predicament is deeper than even Phil thought. He somehow gets locked inside Groundhog Day in Punxsutawney. He can't escape. Stuck in time, he's futilely waking up the same day over and over at 6 a.m., always the sound on his alarm of Sonny and Cher singing, "I got you, babe. I got you, babe." Every single day. I guess the joke and the hook for us is that many of us might have at one time or another felt the same way about our daily rounds and duties. Have you ever felt kind of trapped in your having to go to work? Have you ever felt counting the days until perhaps you can retire? I'm smiling because Jeannie's now laughing. Yeah, how many days, Jeannie? She left, yeah, she forgot now. There was a time when both she and Mike were counting the days. And rightly, what's wrong with that, right? They were giving service in their jobs. Perhaps you were giving service in your jobs. I'm now looking at Jill in terms of school teaching small little rugrats for how many years? Ooh, no, 34. And I bet you, well, I won't speak for her. Every day was not, oh boy, I gotta go again. Did you ever, were you counting the days till summer vacation? Okay, we're gonna move on. As God is our witness? Okay, yeah. But yeah, I think there have been times, always, sometimes we count the days down to vacation. Not that we hate our jobs or don't like our jobs, right? But boy, it's like escape. So, and the proper response would be something like, so that I can rejuvenate and lift up my life so that I can come back with more zeal and zest, renewed, right? Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. But Thoreau called looking forward to, or perhaps like Bill Murray did, feeling he was trapped in a job that he no longer wanted to do. He looked, and Thoreau called these lives of quiet desperation. Jean-Paul Sartre referred to this as la nausée, the nausea of repetition and ordinariness. Sometimes we do get caught in that law of repetition and ordinariness. Is that why we're interested in prediction? Think about that. I did. I kept thinking about it last night. It's like, Yeah, even though we know that God numbers our days, that God owns every minute that we have, no wonder Punxsutawney, who's it there, has so much popularity, because people were placing hope in the prophet, right? Even though they knew he probably was a false guy. I don't know about the ravenous wolves part. I think he was a poor, unsuspecting idol that they lifted up. But think about this. Fortune tellers still can be seen at some of the country and state fairs around. You want to go online? Type in, I didn't, but I can imagine, typing in fortune teller in Michigan, I bet you would see a whole lot of those folks. Now, what do they know that we don't? I don't know. Predictions, fortune tellers, prophets, groundhogs? Because some people in our world definitely do feel trapped and out of control. We long for Bill Murray's redemption from the terrible, repetitive grind. And in the movie, as you go on, Bill's redemption comes from a friend. Ooh, if you look at this from a Christian perspective, you can see that God doesn't give divine messages as frequently today as he seemed to do in the Old Testament. He uses other people to deliver his messages. And in this movie, it comes as Rita, a friend that he gets together with, and she is the one that says this to him to help his pain of repetitiveness forever. Phil, maybe it's how you look at your days that matter the most. There's a little prophetic divine intervention. And for Phil, the light bulb goes on. Self-understanding happens. His day doesn't change. Phil Connors changes. There it is in all of this. It is not about your circumstance. Haven't you heard, and we have read over and over, different scriptures from different gospel writers, New Testament people, Old Testament prophets? At the end of the day, Phil epitomizes Paul's instruction to believers. While we have time, let us do good to all, especially to the household of faith. All that Phil has to do to get out of the repetitiveness doldrum is to love another human being for who she is, rather than just trying to seduce her or force her into being what he wants her to be. Wow. So what about each of us? Are we awakening today, this day, every day at 6 a.m., complaining to ourselves, oh no, I got to go to work again, or oh no, I've put this off, I've got to do it again? Or have we begun to find that Christ in every day is filled with endless opportunities to grow, learn, and serve? It's our belief, yes, in information from prophets of old, but through Jesus Christ, who is God as well as the Messiah, that if we seem to be stuck in a hole, and every day we wake up and try to do the same thing again, and we are never going to retire, we are never going to feel any better in our bodies than we are today, then we truly are stuck. But if we look at God, not out at the landscape, not the fact that it's snowing today and it doesn't look very hopeful for an early spring, because we are Michiganders and we know it doesn't get to be spring until May here. Yeah. Okay? If you look beyond all of that, you will find new energy, you will grow, you will find something new to do this winter that you've never done before, even if it's read the book that you have tried to put on your bucket list for 5 years. Anybody? Yeah. Even that will pull you out of repetitiveness of your doldrums and into the new light that says, God has created me as a miracle, and I am going to do something new every day. Whether you're 16, 18, 25, 45. Do I get a 65? Can I hear 75? Can I hear 80? Okay. Can I hear 85? Can I hear 112? In the You are a false prophet, Logan. I know you are, because I read it in the news last night that a lady in the UP in Houghton, in the UP, celebrated, and it had her nice little picture on there. She celebrated her 112th birthday yesterday. She did not look 112, I'll tell you. It must be UP living. But even at 112, you know, you can tell a lot by looking at people's faces. I looked at that woman's face, she was on a video, and I went, that woman is not repetitive. She is not in the doldrums. God, that we should be like that if we be 112 years old. That's the point, guys. You can't give up at 80 because you might be 99 before he lets you join him. Oh, yeah, and I knew that. Look, and there it is. I rest my case. I heard some, oh. That's Phil Connors repeating himself. You need to get out of that hole and experience today, no matter what it brings, based on the prophets of old who said to you, we know that you will be a saved people. And that saved people will happen because of God-made man, Jesus Christ. And if you follow the prophet Messiah, Jesus, you will learn that he is true, he is faithful, he is loving, he cares about everybody in his community, and he says to you, do not get stuck. Get out of the hole and do something new for me. Amen.